Okay, cool. Welcome to this talk on influencer marketing. And in order to start it right, I'm going to take a selfie with you, if that's okay. Sure. Smile, everyone, all the way to the back. Right. So my name is Filip. I worked as a product and delivery manager for PMYB, one of the UK's leading influencer marketing agencies, as well as having worked in the past at Conga, which is a transport tech company, and No Moon, which is a game development company. In the past, I've done game design work for Ubisoft and Fantaptic, and I run my own events with a company called Game Anglia in the east of England. So what all of these will tell you is that I have quite a diverse experience, so that allowed me to learn quite a lot, as well as the fact that I'm a problem solver and I like helping people as much as I can. And people who know me will say that I'm a starter. So with that being said, let's start this presentation. So what exactly are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be looking at what other industries are doing in order to create successful influencer marketing campaigns and see how we can apply that to games. So we're going to be having a look at some terminology. We're going to be having a look at the platforms that are currently being used for influencer marketing successfully, as well as try and destroy some myths about influencer marketing. And then we're going to have some looks at tips and tools for you to use in your own influencer marketing campaigns. And lastly, I'll be talking about a case study that I've helped with recently. But before we begin, can everybody raise their hand if they've done influencer marketing in the past? Okay. That's really good to hear. What about any influencers in the room? Okay. I think that a lot of you are more influencers than you'd like to admit. And I'd like you to actually take a moment and give yourselves a score on a scale from 1 to 10 about how much you know in terms of influencer marketing. Right? Where 10 being, 10 being a lot and 1 being almost nothing at all. We're going to be evaluating that at the end of the talk. So to begin with, influencer marketing is a marketing channel, right? That's the main thing that I want you to take away from today. It's a marketing channel just as well as blogs are marketing channels, SEO and ASO, App Store Optimization and Search Engine Optimizations are marketing channels, as well as newsletters, merchandise, and offline marketing. The reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of the time influencer marketing is seen as the thing, right? It's not. It's a marketing channel. It's just one that is highly video focused and that's highly call to action focused. And in order for it to be effective, like any of the other ones here on this list, it needs to be used in conjunction with the others. So let's have a look at 3 types of influencers. First, we have individuals or personas. These are usually one person or with one personality who kind of like live or die on their own. They're quite easy to contact on their own or through an agent. And the reason why I singled them out is because of the fact that their reputation is going to be their biggest downfall potentially or their biggest way to success. That's a little bit similar when we look at groups of influencers, such as the Yogscast. This is a group of people who are more easily reachable just because there's more of them. So you can get to the group, get to the influencer group, to any of the people in the group or through an agent. And generally, they're slightly more infallible when it comes to attacks or defamatory attacks or digging stuff or people digging stuff up from the past of any one person in the group because the group is bigger than the parts. And lastly, we have pages. These are pages like Lad Bible where there's no one person behind them and they are mostly reachable through managers. They have a huge reach, especially on places like Facebook. And they're opaque. That also means that they have low authenticity, but their reputation is quite hard to actually topple. And mostly, if they have really good marketing people behind them, they can get through any sort of scandals and reevaluate their culture if that comes into play. The reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because generally the one pillar that has been quite shaky in the influencer marketing industry has been the reputation and the history of influencers. We've seen influencers generally live and die on their history. Now let's move into metrics. I've split this into two categories. The first one is channel-related metrics, such as subscribers and followers, and then engagement metrics. So these are content-specific, and they are the likes, they are the comments, they are the retweets, upvotes, and the like when it comes to each piece of content on its own that's being produced by an influencer. And right here in the middle, we have the ratios between them. So for example, if you divide the number of comments and likes on a YouTube video by the number of views, you'll get the engagement ratio for that video. And that's something that will come up quite a lot in this presentation and when you're negotiating rates with influencers. Now, what's interesting about these two types of metrics is that the ones on the left are what we call vanity metrics. These can be quite easily faked, and they're not necessarily going to lead to increased sales or increased engagement for your products. The ones on the right are what drives return on investment, or ROI, and usually it's the ratio that's very, very important. Now let's have a look at demographics, and this is how generally demographics will look like for a YouTube video, as we can see here. These are split into three categories. You have location, age, ranges, and a binary gender split when it comes to the demographics for a single influencer or for a piece of content. But what I would like you to keep in mind whenever you're thinking about influencer marketing and influencers for your games is to not just think about the audience and the demographics that are having a look at the influencer, but also have a look at the influencer themselves. So where are they based? What do they like? What's their tone? All of these are going to help you target your products a lot better and find your influencers a lot better in order to drive higher ROI and better actions. So let's have a look at the demographics that are available per platform. Instagram and YouTube have some of the best demographics out there, especially at the basic level, where you have locations up to city, 7 age range brackets, and the binary gender split, as I mentioned. So when you're thinking about your games and you're thinking about who your target audience is, generally these are really good bits of demographics to think about. Then what I really found interesting about Twitter is that it's a social media platform where everybody has, in the US, has access to location demographics for location data for their followers, as well as income, consumer behavior, interests. No other social media platform allows you to see this right off the bat. And with Twitter, unfortunately, this is US only, but I thought that was really interesting because it allows you to do a deep dive into who it is that actually follows those people on Twitter in the US. And lastly, I want to mention Twitch because I think at the moment, their demographics data is quite behind. We can only have access to the number of followers. We don't know their age ranges. We don't know their locations. And generally, that's going to hurt an influencer marketing campaign that's done on Twitch because it will be quite hard to assess the impact or to assess who exactly we're targeting. So before we go into platforms, I want you to raise your hand if you've learned something that you didn't know before from the previous slides. Okay, that's good. That's a good start. Yes, I like that. Let's have a look into what platforms are popular in 2019 at the moment. YouTube is the original platform for influencers. And the way that this next series of slides will go is I'll go into the type of content that can be produced by influencers on the platform, and then give you a few tidbits and something that I like personally or I find interesting about the platform. So YouTube, the types of things that you can create are full-on series, which I've seen, for example, KFC do really interestingly recently. And what they did was that they basically sponsored the creation of a series where they did heavy product placement as well as cultural placements. And that's something that you should be thinking about when it comes to your game. It's not just about the product itself, but the type of mentality it promotes and as well as the type of culture that it helps create. So in terms of series, one example that comes to mind when it comes to games is a series that was done for the latest Tomb Raider, where they actually took influencers out into the wild and had them do extreme sports. So that was quite interesting. It led to quite a lot of engagements. And at the end of the day, it just talked about Tomb Raider, right? It wasn't specific in-game content that was being used for that. It was just influencers being the Tomb Raider. Then you can have full videos that are done about your game, such as Let's Plays and reviews. and you can have integrations. So this is where halfway through the videos, an influencer is going to be talking about how awesome your game is, or they're going to be giving out a promo code, or they're going to be integrating integrating your product, your game, into their usual series. And if you have a look, if anybody has a look at like makeup or beauty influencers, they do this all the time. They basically integrate a new product into their daily routines. What YouTube has been doing lately is also they have stories, they have YouTube Live, YouTube Gaming, and YouTube Red, and those haven't been explored that much. That's something that I'll go into in a bit, but I would like to see more influencer and sponsored activity around that. So 3 things to keep in mind about YouTube is that they have the second widest demographic range out of all of the social media platforms out there. So wherever you are on that age range, for example, you can most likely find your audience on YouTube. The action potential is limited on mobile simply because you can't easily access the description of the video by default. You have to do an action to get there. But on PC, it's more likely the best engagement-driven platform. And lastly, it has the highest cost of all platforms because that's where influencer marketing got started. So as I said, if you have a bigger budget, do allow 10 or 20% of that budget to be spent on influencers creating content for YouTube through YouTube Live or through stories, and see how that goes. At the moment, the industry doesn't have that much data on that, and we definitely need more data. So if you have a budget, then definitely do try that. Next, Instagram. Instagram, I gave the subtitle of Analytics Plus because they have the best analytics and the most reliable analytics of everything I've seen for a full range of content. So you can create stories, which are the highest engagement content of everything that's out there, which is absolutely amazing. You can create image posts or video posts with your game or with your product, as well as having access to Instagram Live and Instagram TV that, again, we don't really have that much data on. The reason why I said this is Analytics Plus is because for all of these, you have almost real-time access to the data of to the analytics of how well your content did. So you're able to then tweak and change your content as needed, even from one story to the other. So 3 interesting things about Instagram is that the demographics are heavily skewed towards younger people. So if you're doing a game that's for older audiences, such as an RTS, maybe don't go with Instagram. They have the highest engagement and conversion rates on mobile, simply because the story, and that's solely through the stories format. What the stories format allows you and gives you, and I think this is amazing, is that it gives you the unrequited attention, it gives you the full attention of somebody for 10 to 15 seconds on the full screen of their phone. And if you have a simple call to action, if you have a code, if you have a timer, like we do here, then those are things which are going to drive engagement. They're going to drive action, right? As game developers, a lot of us have integrated things like timers into our games because we know they work. That's why Instagram added them as well. And lastly, the costs for Instagram influencer marketing are going to vary wildly based on the region. A story that I have was for a campaign that we were doing where we were targeting the East Asian population, and the prices suddenly went, I think, to something like a 10th or a 5th of the prices that we had for the Western Hemisphere, simply because they were influencers who, although had the numbers, they didn't have the experience to ask for a lot of money. So your prices are going to vary quite a lot. So another thing that I like to suggest is to use Facebook's, because Instagram is being owned by Facebook, you can use their ad targeting tools in order to repurpose content that's being created by influencers. If you have clever contracts, you can use a story and repurpose that into an ad that's being shown on Instagram. And we've seen that work really, really well, both across Instagram and Facebook. Speaking of Facebook, it's not just for old people. You can create a huge range of content on it: text, images, video, stories, boosting all of the above, as well as creating sidebar ads. So the reason why, as well as video image ads, Yeah, and that's where we stop. The reason why I really like Facebook is because, as I said before, you have really good really good ad targeting tools, as well as creating a whole range of content. So this allows you as game developers to think really well about the type of content that you want influencers to create, and the freedom space, the creative space that you can allow an influencer to create in. It's not, if you're going for Instagram, most likely they're going to be creating stories. But if you're going for Facebook, you can work with creative writers, you can work with people who have really good graphic design skills, not just video editing skills. So 3 things about Facebook. They have the widest spread demographic range, as well as mainly being the best tool for driving awareness towards your product. And they have a low cost for that. So boosting a post on Facebook isn't going to cost a lot. And if you have it be created by an influencer whose name people remember, then or whose face people know, then that's something that you can use in order to retarget content that's already been created and really improve your costs and your reach. One interesting fact that I said that I would like to mention about Facebook, as I said, is that you can really lower your costs and use clever contracts in order to retarget content. Next, if we're going into Twitch, the content that you can create on Twitch, basically full Let's Plays or integrations, as we've seen on YouTube as well, but this is a gaming-only platform, right? So what I really like about Twitch, other than the amazing personas that come out of it, is that at the moment, it's probably the platform which has the highest availability of free tools which we can use in order to check the content of the influencers, not necessarily their audience, but we can see, for example, how the viewers have stayed on a piece of content, and then if we track that in order to see when an influencer has done ads or integrations, we can then quite easily estimate how good or how effective sponsored content is going to be. So, for example, if we see that that sponsored integrations are driving the viewer count lower by 50%, then that's something that we need to keep in mind when we're talking to a Twitch influencer about doing content on our game. They are also centered around gaming culture and, as before, cost very wildly, especially based on reputation and based on experience as well. So anybody here has done ads on Twitch working with influencers? Okay. Are you getting the same experience in terms of, yeah, okay, good. So what's really good about Twitch and what I like about it is that people are part of our community. So we'll be able to find Twitch influencers here. We can go to TwitchCon, we can go to Twitch networking events and actually meet the influencers. And that's something that if we put enough time into, it's going to allow us to actually drive the prices down a little bit for us in order to do those campaigns. And we need to also remember that gaming is a passion project for a lot of people, as well as a business. So don't expect things for free, but at the same time, if you have a cool game, you'll most likely get better prices from Twitch influencers. Next, TikTok. Anybody here have a TikTok account? Okay, anybody? Yes. Anybody here know what TikTok is? Okay, quite a few of you, good. So the reason why I love TikTok is because it does one thing and it does it really well. Story-like videos, like on Instagram. And at the moment, it has the youngest demographic of all of the platforms. Generally, people under 20, you'll rarely see people over 25, right? Let's just take 25 on TikTok. And I absolutely love this because if you have a game that's targeted towards younger demographics, this would definitely be the platform where they're at. But at the moment, we have almost no gaming content on there. It's very widespread outside of the Western Hemisphere. So if you're going with Asia, if you're going with South America, even if you're going with Eastern Europe in terms of where you're targeting your game, a lot of young people are going to be on TikTok there because it's highly viral, it's really easy to consume. And also, what I really like is that tools are now coming online both for search and for analytics for TikTok. So there's a really big white space there where people haven't done gaming influencer marketing campaigns on TikTok that we can totally target. And I would love to be part of the first successful gaming campaign on TikTok. So if you're interested, let me know after the presentation. And lastly, Jiffy or Imager. By the way, I'm the GIF type person. I apologize to all the GIF type people in the room. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because we see a lot of brands actually use GIFs and reaction GIFs effectively as marketing tools out there. So you can create reaction GIFs, content GIFs, and stickers on Jiffy. I've seen Dior go really big, and a lot of fashion brands go really big into stickers on Jiffy because they're being used heavily on stories, both on Snapchat and on Instagram. So think about that. Think about what types of content you could create on these platforms. In addition to this, they are huge awareness tools. So Sony, for example, the film studio, not the game studio, the film studio has, I think, about 24 or 25 GIFs on their official Jiffy channel. And those have been used over, I think, 100 million times. So those are people who are looking for reaction GIFs, who got GIFs from the most recent Spider-Man movie. And because they used that, they increased awareness of their film. But oddly enough, I haven't seen any game studios have official channels on Jiffy. So you can be pioneers. Everybody in this room can be pioneers. They lead to high virality, as well as it's important to keep in mind that it's quite hard to assess the reach and the actions that were taken. While we know how many times they were used, we don't really know if they were used, say, in a Discord where maybe 2,000 people have seen them, or in a private conversation between two people. But we do know how many times the GIFs have been sent in conversations. So what I really like is these reaction GIFs, which were created by Sony Santa Monica, using the God of War, the God of War models and animators. And I think this actually stands as a testament to our unique power as game developers. We can totally use our animators and we can totally use our graphic designers in order to create really cool, engaging GIFs, especially if we do it as a team building activity, like a game jam, right? Think about taking half a day off on a Friday as you're reaching the end of your game development production cycle and just creating GIFs. Having everybody in your team create reaction GIFs or content GIFs, and then having your PR/marketing people create a channel for your studio and then putting those online. Alternatively, what you could do is you could work with GIF creators, and if you want subreddits for GIFs, let me know, I can hook you up, to basically hire them as we would an influencer to create GIFs for us from our games. Right, show of hands, who learned something new over the past few slides? Yes, almost everybody, good. I'm really happy to hear that. Right, let's dive right into myths. First myth, influencer marketing is either very cheap or very expensive, and like having those as the extremes. There's definitely not a slider in between them. Well, actually there is. Influencer marketing is as expensive as we want it to be. So if we want to do it cheaply, we can do it cheaply. If we want to do it expensively, we can do it expensively. If we choose to do it cheaply, who is an indie in the room, an independent developer? Okay, who works at a bigger studio in the room? Okay, good. There's tips for both sides of this. So if we want to do it cheaply, we need to remember that time is money. And if you don't have a budget, you should totally hustle, look for the influencers, try and work with them to do barter systems or to drive the price down or find people who are cheaper. And remember that time is your most valuable resource. So if you don't have money, you will most likely, hopefully have time, and you should be using your time to drive the prices down. If we do it this expensively, we need to compare it with traditional advertising, right? Remember that Pepsi spent $1 million just redesigning their logo. Guinness spent $16 million on an advertising campaign. Those are types of prices which we can think about when we think marketing, right? So why would influencer marketing be different if we're going to be using people with millions of followers with really high engagement? Right? A lot of people don't think about that when they say, oh, influencer marketing is too expensive. Not when you compare it with really big traditional marketing. Influencers are creative, so a lot of the time they're going to help you create influencer marketing campaigns, and they're going to actually take away some of the costs that you would pay people to come up with ideas, especially if you work with them throughout the creative process. And we need to remember that if you do have a marketing budget, you should use it. And why not use it on influencer marketing as one of your marketing channels? Next, all influencers have fake metrics. While followers and comments and upvotes and engagements in general can be bought, something to keep in mind is that you can track these. There's plenty of tools out there that you can use to track these, either automatically or manually. And what's really cool is that a lot of the time, growth search and into influencers, especially on platforms like YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, is free. You'll almost always be able to find a free tool to use just to see if an influencer has fake followers or has had a really weird growth curve. And we'll actually go into that in a sec. Or, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to go and use tools, work on a recommendation system, right? Everybody here in this room was interested in influencer marketing. Some of you have actually done influencer marketing campaigns. So have a look around and talk to these people and see who has used influencers before, who they've had a really good experience with, so that you can use the same influencers as them. Or lastly, if you don't want to do either of these and you do go through 1, 2, 3 influencers where you see weird growth curves, keep in mind that there are many influencers out there, especially in this day and age. So if at first you don't succeed, try again. And in the end, you will end up finding people with really organic, cool growth. Next, you can never measure return on investment. I absolutely love that GIF. It's from the official Saturday Night Live channel on Jiffy. And what I'd like to begin with here is that in order to measure your return on investment, you need to first define your goal. And keep in mind that goals should be smart, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. If they're not specific, then you and the influencer are going to have completely different goals in mind. If they're not measurable, you won't know when you've actually got there. If they're not achievable, you'll end up having results, but not through good practices. So if you want to see campaigns which probably achieved their metrics, but they had a really negative impact on the game that they were promoting, search for worst mobile ad games on YouTube, and you'll see quite a few examples there of influencer marketing campaign done wrong. If they're not realistic, then you and the influencer are going to have a bad time because shortcuts will be taken. And if they're not time-bound, then you and the influencer are going to be thinking in completely different terms. You'll create confusion, and not a lot of good things are going to come out of that. Keep in mind that also return on investment needs to be defined. So what is it that you want out of your influencer marketing campaign? Is it, do you want sales? Do you want website visits? Do you want engagement on the content that's being created? Or do you actually want user-generated content? All of these are goals, and they can lead towards higher sales or a higher profit margin at the end of the day. But you need to keep in mind that it's not just sales, right? People also need awareness. People also need to actually engage with your brand. And lastly, you need to find your analytics tools in order to measure these. So a few of them are Bitly or AppsFlyer if you want to go into the premium part of link tracking. Or you can just use traditional cookie and attribution tracking, like the UTM parts of a lot of URLs. The next method is that you should always, and you can always do it on your own. The reason why I say this is a myth is because I strongly believe that game developers should develop. Unless you want to become an entrepreneur or unless you want to become a marketer, as game developers, if you're a programmer, if you're an artist, you should focus on your craft, you should focus on what you're good at, because not everyone is born a marketer, right? We have different skills, and we should try and combine those as much as possible. You shouldn't be spending most of your time trying to track down influencers when your game's still in alpha and you have a release coming up in 3 months. Think about your budget, and again, this is going to come up quite a while. Is it that you have more time or money on your hands, and then try to balance those? Work smart, not hard, and think about whether or not you can delegate. So for example, one thing that you could do is you can work with a local college or university to hire an intern, not free internships, in order to allow them to manage your influencer marketing campaign, right? They're most likely going to know the influencer marketing space much better than you are, especially if you've been like developing for a very long time and you didn't keep track of influencer marketing. And most likely they're going to be able to do a good job with a relatively low pay, improving your return on investment. And something to keep in mind is that influencer marketing is a multi-billion pound industry for a reason. Right? There's agencies out there. I think there's, at the latest study, there were like 650 influencer marketing agencies worldwide with the rate of them grow, which were specific for influencer marketing, with a rate of growth of about 33% over the past year. Right? So keep in mind that there's a reason why it's an industry out there. You can't always do it on your own. And the last one that I want to shatter is that influencer marketing is a silver bullet. It's not. Influencer marketing is is a marketing channel. Although it's highly trending and highly effective, it's not the only thing that you should be doing, right? You need to use it in conjunction with all the other marketing channels out there. If you have a look at the have a look at the tube ads, have a look at the mobile ads that you're getting, which aren't influencer related, and then have a look at influencer marketing that's being done by the same companies. Most likely those are going to convert much better because you're helping raise awareness first, and then you use influencers as like the final punch to get people to actually act. So it's not a silver bullet. Influencers, the last thing that I want you to remember is that influencers are not just tools, they're here to help, and they're people. And we're going to go into that in a second. Hands up, anybody learn anything new? Okay, good. Last section, tips and tools. If you have a big budget, the first thing that you should do is hire an agency because they have the experience and they have access to the tools and contacts that you won't necessarily have access to. They allow you to work smarter, not harder, by doing a lot of the hard work for you. So a lot of the time, what I told influencer marketing agencies that I had a chat with is that they end up working as part of the marketing department. It's just that sometimes it's just a remote marketing department that focuses on influencers. And a lot of the time nowadays, you're going to start seeing influencer marketing companies which are also production houses or which also allow you to retarget content on Facebook, which also allow you to do training programs, to create content, and a bunch of other stuff. So if you can hire them, hire them. What I've done is that I've always kept the most important, for the next 3 slides, I've kept the most important tip on the middle. So this is the most important one if you have a big budget. Understand slang, because if I'm an influencer marketing agency and I promise you 3 million reach and 1.5 million impressions, you're going to be like, wow, that's really cool. For that amount of money, yeah, you should totally do that. Here, let me throw some cash at you. And that sounds really cool, unless you think about the fact that they might be doing that with 500,000 accounts, each of them with 6 followers. Right? So when you negotiate terms and conditions, try and understand how your money is going to be used and how the content is going to be created. Because if you multiply 500,000 by 6, then you're going to get this 3 million reach, and it's possible that, out of the 6, 3 of them are actually engaged audience, and they're going to have a look at the content, and that's how you get to 1.5 million impressions. However, that's not necessarily going to be good for you because it dilutes your message a lot through different people. So when you're negotiating with an influencer marketing agency, make sure that most of your target audience is going to be in the region and within the demographic that your game is targeting. Otherwise, you end up basically buying downloads off of a server farm in like Russia or China, right? Make sure that you understand how many pieces of content each influencer is going to produce and how reach and impression are being calculated by that influencer marketing agency, because or by the influencers themselves. Because a lot of the times, agencies are going to understand those metrics differently. And try to go multi-channel. So I'll go into this in a sec, but keep in mind to research your non-games market. So your target audience is going to be doing other things than just be playing games all day, unless you're, even if you're working on the next FIFA. And you can target them and reach them with your content outside of when they're playing games. Understand your target audience and make sure to use both print, TV, social media ads, community management, merchandise in order to reach that target audience to increase your awareness and to drive sales. Don't just use influencer marketing. If you have a low budget, take your time, research each influencer that you want to work with, and customize each message that you send out. So I've been to a really good talk about how to send emails effectively to journalists. And a lot of the times those tips are going to work for influencers as well. Research them, send them an email that is not generic and that actually taps into what they're doing and what they like, because that's how you get them to respond. Meet them personally if you can, especially if they're UK based or wherever you are based. And use your power as a developer as much as possible, because if you allow influencers to become part of your community, you can do some really cool things, right? You can get them, you can not only get custom deals with influencers, but you can also get them to lead part of the content development on your game, and that way they'll be more likely to become your promoters. Or one really cool thing that I've seen is to actually get influencers in your game. A friend of mine was working on a free-to-play game for mobile that had pets in them. So what he did was he actually contacted influencers who had pets and got them to agree to get their pets modeled in the game, basically in return for advertising. So if you can do stuff like that, it doesn't take a lot of development time. Again, time, money, all of that access. That's going to allow you to do quite a lot of cool things for not very much effort on your part, right? Because you're the developer, they're the influencers. If you can work with each other and help each other. And lastly, remember to do your research. And as I said before, free tools are out there, both for influencer marketing campaign management and for finding influencers and for seeing what type of content is trending. If a deal seems too good, it probably is. If anybody here created a website on GoDaddy, you know how that goes. If you actually give your true phone number and you start getting calls from dozens and dozens of web developers who promise you really good deals, it's the same with influencers. As soon as you say that you're interested in influencer marketing, you're going to start getting emails from people who promise you really huge numbers with really low prices. It doesn't always work like that. And think about both who your competitors are using and who your friends are working with. Again, recommendations, just like in hiring in the games industry, work the same with influencer marketing. If your friends have used someone and they're really happy with them, feel free to use them if they make sense, as well as having a look at your competitors and seeing what type of creative content, so what were their marketing ideas, and seeing what type of influencers they were using. Then you can use similar searchers in order to help you and in order to reduce the time that it takes to actually get to an influencer. And general tips. Make sure that you get a lawyer, make sure that you understand deliverables and that you get a contract that's pretty much, that's really well done. And always pay on delivery of analytics. With Instagram, for example, for stories, the analytics come in 24 hours, and the analytics for a post come in about 1 week to actually get relevant data. This is the most important one that I wanted to talk about here. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, most of the content here is not games related, right? Games is maybe 20% of the content. So what happens with the other 80%? Think about if you're making a racing game where you have electric cars, right? One way that you could do influencer marketing is to just talk with racing influencers. Another way that racing influencers, people who play racing games. Another way of doing that is to search for EV, electric vehicle, EV 2019, and so on Instagram. See who the geeks are who talk about electric cars, and then go to them and tell them about your game and get them to collaborate on your game. You'll be accessing parts of the same target audience, people who are into racing and or electric cars, but from a different side. So you'll be extending your target audience, and you might potentially be selling that to different people, right? And you can do that for any of those. Find your hashtags, as I said before, EV, electric cars, and make sure that you create campaigns who are for your audience once you understand what their interests are. Even if it's not specifically with in-game footage or with gaming influencers. And lastly, think of influencers as community managers, right? They have their own communities, and authenticity is their biggest selling point. When you're working with influencers, keep in mind that influencers work with companies, not for companies. and lean into their expertise and creativity because they're going to know their target audience best. So, as I said before, let's have a look into tools. So Bitly is a free tool that allows you to create short links, and it allows you to track link clicks, what platform people are coming from, and what place they are coming from. And one really cool thing that you can do with Bitly is this right here. So if you take a Bitly link and you add plus at the end of it, you'll be able to see the results for that campaign unless that person is using Bitly Premium. So what that allows you to do is, if you're looking for an influencer and you think they're a really cool person and all of your growth analytics look organic, if they've been using Bitly, check that link and you'll be able to see the results for that specific part, that specific post or that specific story. And that way, you'll be able to have a benchmark against which to estimate how your campaign is going to do. Upfluence is a free Chrome plugin that allows you to see the engaged audience demographics for any YouTube or Instagram influencers. So these are the people who leave a comment or who like or upvote something. They allow you to see the age, location up to city, as well as the growth of an influencer, and they give you some grades for each influencer. So the higher the grade, the better that influencer is compared to someone in that range of influencer type. Something to keep in mind, though, is that it has a limited number of uses per day. So if you're an indie, you're most likely going to do okay. But if you're looking for 500 influencers, it's going to take a very long time. Of course, it also has a premium option that has a lot of really cool stuff, but it costs quite a bit. And your results may vary for Instagram and YouTube. Sometimes you might need to wait 5 minutes while they pull the data if it's a person that they haven't scanned before. Of course, as I said, you can use any of these tools and a bunch of others. There's about 70 of them that I was able to find in order to find the influencers. So what you can do for this is to find influencers based on the interests of your audience. So this is quite advanced. Not just age, location, and gender brackets, but also what their interests are, what brands they follow, what other influencers they follow, audience lookalikes. So you would be able to find people who look like the people who follow PewDiePie, for example. Or do hashtag tracking, which is all really cool stuff. A lot of these also have campaign management tools and campaign reporting tools. The bad side is that they're paid plans. They usually cost quite a lot, especially for indies, and that they have annual subscriptions. And the next to last tool that I want to show you is called Hype Auditor. So this is the best tool I was able to find for Instagram in order to check the growth of an influencer. It also gives you audience demographics and fake follower scores for each influencer, as well as it has an engagement rate calculator. And it shows you the most popular content. However, what's really cool is that if you follow this link, you can get to the free version, which looks like this, and you'll get the short version of an influencer's followers, fake follower score for free on Instagram. Or if you want to get to the big influencer report card, you can ask your influencers to give you for free, or you can just pay for it if you have some budget for that. And lastly, Instagram search. So this little bar over here, that's really cool because it allows you, because it's free, and although it's not very easy to use, you can use it to find both influencers and trends on Instagram. So the way that you can use this, if you define your hashtags, is you can use hashtag hopping by seeing popular posts and seeing what other hashtags were used in conjunction with your hashtag. And it allows you to find different types of content. It allows you to find different types of influencers. And you can actually use influencer hopping. So if I really like that person, the moment that I press follow, I'll get these suggested other people on Instagram. So I can then see, and that's the lookalike audience, lookalike influencer part of that. And if you do that, you'll be able to do it for free and find quite a lot of influencers. Actually, this is a game called Pendulum Swing that I helped find influencers for. They wanted to find influencers who weren't game related, but who were interested in the 1920s aesthetic. This game is a point and click adventure set in a fantasy world with a 1920s aesthetic. So what I did was I used the tag search I used for these hashtags. I searched for these hashtags, and then I was able to find 36 influencers in 3 to 5 hours just using hashtag hopping and using influencer lookalike hopping, which was really cool. At the moment, I can't say more about their marketing campaign. That's like still ongoing. But this shows you what you can do with a free tool and with time on your hands. And with that being said, and 1 minute to go, I would like to thank you for coming here today. And before you clap, I would like you to raise your hand if you learned something new today. Yes, that's everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming here today. Also, remember that score that you gave yourself at the beginning about how much you knew about influencer marketing? Who think about what score you'd give yourself now? And raise your hand if you would give yourself a higher score. Yes, nice. Thanks. Any questions? I think we have 1 minute left. Okay, 5 minutes left.
Really quick 5 minutes.
Sure.
You said about TikTok hasn't been used much for games campaigns yet. TikTok's actually just been announced it's under investigation by the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK because of the way it uses children's data. Does that sort of thing affect which platforms a developer should use for influence marketing? Sorry, I'll start talking through a microphone. Hello. Should developers be aware of which platforms they're using if, for example, in the example of TikTok, they are under investigation for the use of children's data, or there is a stigma around how they affect or can influence younger viewers? How does that affect your marketing plans?
That's definitely something that you should keep in mind. I was not aware of that. As I said, I know they recently started rolling out their analytics and search tools. And I know that there is currently a race going on around which fashion companies can do their first really successful campaigns, as well as beauty. So I think that that's something that's going to regulate itself going forward, and it's definitely something that if you're interested in TikTok specifically, or if you're making a game for a younger audience, you should keep up with, right? And that's the same with influencers. So you should always do your background checks on influencers to make sure that they don't have people who really, really hate them and they try to denigrate them, or people who, or to make sure that your influencers haven't been in like scandals, right? So it's the same with the platforms. YouTube is also an example that has been under fire quite a lot over the past few years, but that hasn't stopped people doing influencer marketing campaigns on YouTube. So it's just something to be aware of and to think about how you would like to associate your company and your game with the platforms that you're using. Does that answer your question? Cool. Other questions? Okay, cool. Thank you very much for coming here. Oh, sorry, one question.
Where are you from?
Originally from Romania. Cool. Thank you so much for coming here today, and have a really nice develop.